Hello and welcome back to another episode from GUIGLIT, your one-stop shop for all things books, beards and beyond. By request today, I'll be going through my predictions and advice for the 2025 GCSE English Literature examination paper for Eduqas. Now, I'll be covering the following texts, as you'll see on the screen, but don't worry if there are texts that you study on this exam board and have not come up. Drop me a comment below and let me know, and I'll give you the best advice I possibly can with what I have. Also, if you are unaware, GUIGLIT is also available on TikTok and Instagram, where we post more updates and advice. So be sure to see you there. It'd be great to have you there. Before I get into this, I just want to make a little comment about the whole nature of prediction videos themselves. I often find that there's a little bit of a caveat that has to be said with this little clause. And that's the following. We truly don't know what's going to come up. I have no greater inside knowledge. What I have is some calculated guesses. Nothing more, nothing less than that. So little disclaimer on this as I go. But with each one, I'll explain my logic, my rationale, take it from there, whilst also providing advice for both of the papers. So let's get into it and start with Macbeth. Now, one thing we can say for certain is the fact that it's a linear paper, so there's no high tier, no foundation tier. There will be a question in there of relatively achievable difficulty. By that I mean those who are looking to get into the pass grades, those 4s and 5s, will be able to achieve something worthwhile. Also, those looking for the top grades will be able to really stretch themselves and get something more from it. So, based along what's come up previously, we're looking at some sort of character who spans a lot of the text, or we're looking for a theme that could significantly be proven across the play. So, thematically, we're looking at things like the supernatural. We're also looking at things like ambition, and we're looking at the way kings are presented throughout the play itself. I think there are 3 places that haven't really been covered before, or not in a long time. They could be very worthwhile predictions. Equally, just maybe this is me, but something says a character like Banquo's never been shown across anything. It would be challenging. He's not particularly in a lot, and he's at the end of Act 3. He's not physically there anymore. But there are a lot of different points to him. Maybe a question on loyalty, perhaps, in ambition. That could also be that as well. Now, the extract is harder to predict, and it's not really something I'd necessarily go into prediction for, but we always know the extract is deliberately chosen. These aren't random lines. It's going to be a specific scene and extract, something significant like the dagger scene, for example. It's always going to be something momentous and significant, so always pay attention to that. And my advice for this question for Macbeth is always make sure for the Eduqas exam board you're sticking to the extract itself for question 1, and also there is no mark for context. So don't go into a whole long rambling spiel about kings and witches if it's not needed. There are no context marks. Okay, now we go on to the poetry itself, and in my prediction and estimation, the poem has always been one that can be accessed. It's not necessarily usually one of the more challenging, difficult ones, like as imperceptibly as grief, for instance, though it's on there, it could come up. So we're looking for something that will be accessible to students across all grades because it's a linear paper. And we're also looking for something that hasn't really come up before. Eduqas currently has a track record of never having had the same poem more than once. So again, while that could happen, not say it can't happen, there are a number of really accessible poems that have not come up so far. And I put them down as poems like The Soldier, Valentine, Hawk Roosting, Ozymandias, Cozy Apologia, and Living Space. So far, none of those have ever come up before. They've never been presented as the 15 marker, so it's worth knowing. But remember, with poetry, unlike Macbeth, there are marks for context. So it's worth knowing the background details of these poets and the poems themselves to make sure you get those marks unlocked. Now we move on to paper 2, and with unseen poetry, I would encourage you to check out my previous video on that, as it's really about the skills there. They tell you what the poems are about at the start of it anyway, so there really isn't much more to say on it other than practice the skills and check out the video I've already previously done for it. Now moving on to Blood Brothers. With Blood Brothers, they often like to have character relationships, or there is a possibility it could go with things like themes. A question that I think could be a possibility that's never been explored before is the relationship between Mrs. Johnstone and Mrs. Lyons. I think there's a lot of things that can be said about that that could be well explored, but also there is the case that they could go for something like a theme. So we could look at things like the superstitious element of the play. We could also be looking at the idea of class in the play or families in the play. Although with that being said, Mick and Mrs. Johnstone is also a relationship that is with a lot of material, could have a lot of potential, But otherwise, a lot of them have been covered previously, so if I haven't said it, it probably has already. And finally, onto A Christmas Carol. And don't forget, if you have any questions, drop me a comment. The GUIGLIT guarantee is I will get back to each and every single one of you. So the idea with the Christmas Carol is that, first of all, you need a bit of context within there as well, so make sure you have that too. But to know a Christmas Carol is to know Scrooge and how Scrooge changes. So a question around Scrooge, maybe something like charity, or maybe something around the idea of Christmas, has already been done. A lot of these have already been exhausted, quite frankly. But the idea of charity, or Fred in particular, and his relationship with family, I think there's a lot of things that can be exploited there that haven't previously been used. But don't forget, they can also recover pieces before, and if you want to look at any past questions, they are available on the website. That's been my roundup of my predictions for this forthcoming year. I will wish you all the very best of luck. Do be sure to like, share and subscribe. Drop us a comment if you have any questions. And until next time, take care, all the very best, and bye-bye.